Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Cryptid Crew podcast. My name is Mark Childers, and I've got a great show planned for you today. Before we get started, if you've had an encounter, an experience, something you can't explain, please shoot me an email with your contact information at the Cryptid Crew podcast at gmail.com. We're going to do things just a little bit different today. We're not going to have any interviews. No field researchers, no investigators, writers. It's just going to be myself flying solo with a witness report that I took not quite a year ago, probably about 9 months. But it's been a fascinating 9 months since this witness interview started. And I'm going to just dive right in and preface this podcast and what I'm about to say with the intro that you had heard is a partial recording of this witness. And I'm just going to use his first name, Alan. And thankfully our paths crossed at the 2024 East Alabama Bigfoot Town Hall that was put on by Stacy Brown Jr., Tyler Howell, M.K. Davis, Dale Boswell, Connor Flynn, and some others spoke there and did a presentation. And I was there at the morning session listening to a presentation, and then there was a break for lunch, and I left because I had a terrible headache. Went and got some caffeine, hoping that would help, and thankfully it did. So I returned to the town hall and came in on a presentation done by Tyler Howell, I believe. And the lights were off, so I stood on the back wall. And when the lights came on, when he got through, I noticed Alan and Wanda there. And I walked outside, and they came outside on the front porch area of the Civic Center, or the Community Center. And we started talking, and they asked, why were you there? Why are you here, Mark? And basically, I told them I was interested and have been interested in a cryptid enthusiast for several years, and I asked them the same, and they had a recording, so my ears kind of perked up when he told me that, and I said, recording? I said, what do you have? And they said, do you want to listen to it? And I said, yes, absolutely. So I listened to the recording probably 2 or 3 times there outside off of a phone, which he recorded it by, but you could tell even with the outside noise and you're listening to it on a phone that this was not faked and not embellished or whatever, that it was organic. And we started talking, and I said, tell me a little bit about what you got and when did it happen and so forth. And he did. And it was in the wintertime, about 2 in the morning when he couldn't sleep, like I had mentioned. And he went back in and got his phone after he had heard something in the woods out to his, I guess it would be his southwest of his front porch that he was standing on at the time. So he brought it to the town hall for someone to listen to see, if they knew what it was. Not saying it was a Bigfoot or Sasquatch or skunk ape or whatever, but just trying to figure out what made this noise. And going back to the presenters at this town hall, Stacy Brown Jr. being one, and if you're familiar with Bigfoot research or the topic, or if you've dove into it any, you have probably heard of his name. Him and his dad, back in the early 2000s, I believe, recorded what is probably the most popular evidence of a Sasquatch on thermal footage I've ever seen. And when a comparison is done at the same spot, same location, same distance of a human, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind that what they saw was bipedal, extremely large, and nothing that is known or listed as a known, creature. So they sent that off. Alan got with them, and they sent it off to someone, the recording, to analyze. And I had called Alan maybe 2 months prior, 2 months after the recording was set off, and said, hey, I would like to hear the recording again to you. I said, absolutely. So he sent it to me, and I listened to it multiple times, and had some skeptics listen to it as well, and they could not explain what it was. And we'll play this a little bit later on in the podcast. Fast forward to June, I was at the 2024 Bigfoot Festival in the Smoky Mountains in Townsend, Tennessee, and met Ron Moorhead. And if you don't know who Ron Moorhead is, he recorded the Sierra Sounds, what is supposed to be a Bigfoot or Sasquatch. And R. Scott Nelson, who I met also there, is a retired cryptologic linguist for the U.S. Navy. And he worked for the Navy, I believe, for about 25 or 30 years. And got into the subject when he met Ron Moorhead and analyzed the sounds from the Sierra Sounds. So I spoke to Scott Nelson at the festival and said, look, I've got a recording I'd like for you to hear. And he said, sure, I'll be glad to hear it. So I let him listen to it through my phone. And he listened to it multiple times there and said, look, I want to analyze this and listen to it further. Can you email it to me, please? And I did. And we communicated back and forth through email for probably about a month or two. And I'll read to you in a nutshell, of what he sent back to me. He said, Mark, I analyzed the audio. It is definitely not something human, or neither coming from any other known forest creature. He says it is obvious it is not human, nor do I hear any evidence of fakery. And that probably is the most important part to me, because I knew it was totally organic when I heard it for the first time. And by him analyzing the audio and saying that it is not faked, just kind of put the stamp on it for me as well. Alan had the audio analyzed as well by someone, and it was sent back to him. And as I said before, we communicated probably a couple of months after the town hall, and whoever it was that analyzed it said it was no known forest creature or no known vocal of anything that was in the database. So you have two professionals that analyze this audio, and they have no answers for it, which is pretty compelling to me. Now I'm going to describe the area that this recording came from. It's fairly rural. If you go directly north, you can go towards Bowden, Georgia, west towards the Talladega National Forest, back south towards Ashland, Alabama, and then back east over towards where the recording was. And not including the Talladega National Forest, you have probably 250 to 300,000 acres, and a lot of it is sparsely populated. If you add in the Talladega National Forest, which is, I believe, around 390,000 acres, you have close to 700,000 acres that is sparsely populated, heavily wooded, tons of water, tons of food, and can we say it's a travel area in between? I don't know. Do not know why it was in this particular area when Alan recorded it, but I do believe that there's more than one in there. And then I'm about to play the recording, and we'll go over it. And what you're about to hear is him walking back outside onto the deck, hitting record, catching a howl or some type of noise from an animal. At about 18 seconds, you're going to hear a wood knock or either a rock clack. And for the people that are not familiar with Bigfoot research, rock clacks or wood knocks are supposed to be a way of communication. But at about 18 seconds into the recording, you'll hear that. You'll hear his breathing change tremendously. His breathing gets heavy, and then you're going to hear the howl, roar, and then I think another creature, another animal in the distance communicating with this one. All right, so here we go. And that's the recording. You hear him, I believe, walk back in, maybe towards the end. And I'm going to play this one more time at the very end of this episode. And when I talked to Alan, Alan said he has camped, hiked, hunted his whole life, fished. He has never been scared of anything that was in the woods. Prior to this, he said, Mark, this made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. And you could see the emotion in his face from this. There's no doubt that he was telling me the truth, nothing embellished. And again, you can tell on the recording that it's totally organic. It's probably, I'm not sure if it's the best recording I've ever heard, but it's definitely in the top 2 or 3 for sure. You have the Ohio Howl, which I believe was recorded in 1994. You have the Sierra Sounds that I mentioned previously from Ron Moorhead that was done in the 1970s that have been analyzed as well. And there's some others, but this was very close. He thought maybe 50 yards on one, and then not real sure on the other. But you have someone that is an outdoorsman, that is seasoned at that. Like I said, fished, hunted, hiked, camped, stayed out in the wilderness for days. And if you could have seen the emotion on his face when he told me this, that there would be no doubt in your mind as well. I had asked him as well if he had heard any other type of sounds, howls or roars. And if I'm not mistaken, he said he has not heard anything like that previous to that recording. But while I'm thinking about it, like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel out. And thank you for doing that. And going back to this, this area, like I said, it's fairly rural, sparsely populated. and close to 600,000 or 700,000 acres if you include the Talladega National Forest that this land runs into. It's a prime spot for something like that to travel or live, move back and forth. It's possible they could have been trying to find food. I'm not sure. If you have any comments, questions, leave them down below, and I'll try to reply to them as soon as I can. And hopefully I can get him on the show sometime soon. And hopefully Scott Nelson as well. Like I said, Scott was a retired cryptologic linguist for the U.S. Navy for almost 30 years. And he was very helpful and knowledgeable about the subject, and I really appreciate him. But I'm going to play this one more time. You guys listen to it. Like I said, leave some comments down at the bottom. Like, share, and subscribe. It helps the channel out, and I appreciate you listening to the Cryptid Crew podcast.